Let's take you to Wall Street now as investors are digesting President Trump's tariff threats against European countries. The closing bell rang just moments ago as you see the Dow staggering 870 points down. S&P 500 dipped 2%, not noting its worst drop in 3 months. So let's bring in Dr. Sumantra Maitra, the fellow at the Royal Historical Society and founder of Clio Strategic Consultancy. Dr. Maitra, thank you so much for being with us. You argue that President Trump's tariff threats are counterproductive. How could the U.S. approach this differently?
Well, look, the tariffs are fundamentally taxes on Americans. Like, it is if President Trump puts tariffs on U.S. goods, for example, a Danish watch or a German car or a British Scotch whiskey, at the end of the day, it is the American consumers who are paying more to buy them from American markets. The current tariffs are obviously counterproductive and will harm U.S. interest if it's an economic strategy. That being said, I am not really sure if the president is actually using the tariffs as an economic strategy or as a negotiating tactic on Greenland with the Europeans. Europe, on the other hand, evidently cannot do anything either. I mean, the Europeans are not united. It will also crash their economy if they do go against the dollar. And finally, given the American security guarantees, it will throw the continent into tailspin because the Europeans cannot continue doing a brinkmanship with the United States. I think at the end of the day, the best thing that could happen is to have more back-channel diplomacy and track twos between the Europeans and the Americans and talk it out outside the scope of public sphere. But look at the template of the Saudis and the Turks and how they deal with the Americans. And I think that would be a better option for both sides.
Yeah, President Trump today U-turned on the UK's decision to hand over the Chagos Islands to the country of Mauritius. His administration previously supported the deal. Now Trump says it's one more reason to take over Greenland. And in a post to social media, Trump said, quote, "The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity and is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired." So, Dr. Maitra, how important are the Chagos Islands to the U.S. and what do you make of this reversal by the president?
Well, I think the president is actually a lot more correct on this particular issue compared to everything else that has been going on in the last, couple of weeks. I think the island in Diego Garcia is actually an extremely important real estate for the United States, especially, with, a growing Chinese threat in the Asia Pacific. And the British government overall is saying that they are essentially giving it to Mauritius, who are a de facto, Chinese ally. So I think the president is right. I think his question, he's tying it up with Greenland is interesting because the U.S. government can actually form a bipartisan committee to explore the interest among Americans when it comes to Greenland and both Chagos Island. If the British government is in need of cash to sell some of their real estate, the Americans are in the market to buy stuff. The committee, for example, can identify potential investment, ways that Chagos Island and Greenland can be handy to the Americans. They can talk to the British, they can talk to the Danes, they can talk to any other stakeholders who are interested in selling it off because the U.S. is in the process of buying real estate when it comes to the security. So I think tying it up together again points out to the exact thing that I said, exact thing that I said before. It is, to my opinion, a negotiating tactic. Whether it's going to be successful or not, I think the next 2 days is really important to see.
We've seen Trump use this strategy before. I'm curious, we also heard from the European Commission president at Davos about a possible trade deal between the UK and India. Take a look at that.
Right after Davos, the next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals.
So if this is finalized, what could this mean for global trade? Do you think this is a way for Europe to fortify its own trade relationships as a reaction to the tensions with the United States?
Right. So India is an interesting country in the sense that it is a democracy and most of the people there speak English. But on the other hand, they are also in a non-Chinese bloc. They are an independent power. It's a middle-term country. They've got a lot of people who are extremely, educated and intelligent, but they also work pretty cheap, like compared to the living cost and the salary in Europe and America. Indians, obviously, an Indian engineer would work for a lot cheaper compared to anyone else in the world. I think the Europeans have understood that they cannot, even if they want to, create a manufacturing base in their own continent in the way that the Chinese can and the Americans can. I think the cost of living in Europe, the production capacity, extraction of resources, manufacturing, all of these things are really low. So they're trying to find a country which is, on one hand, democratic, not like China, on the other hand, not a revisionist power like the United States, and have a set of people who are relatively easy to work with and work in the sectors that they are lacking. I think that is what they're trying to position themselves with. The Americans actually were trying to do that with the Indians, but obviously in the recent days, for better or for worse, the relationship between India and the United States has gone down a little bit. Not that it's not salvageable, but I think the Europeans have realized that that is an opportunity for them to kind of move in.
Dr. Sumantra Maitra, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.